the few things that we go through. Because it's like the same how you can see people saying, no, this player, you sell him, this one is, but the reality. And that brings me to one issue which I wanted to start with, a statement by Professor Olokonyango, which I think we need to have dialogue on. And also he interrogates it further. Issue of saying parliamentary power is superior to executive power, if that's what he said, if I got it right. And then I go to our resolutions are advisory. So now you have that conflict. The public is saying you have so much power, but then your resolutions are advisory. So it's up to the person you're giving advice to implement, to take or not. We have decisions which are final, especially those to do with legislation, those to do with approvals of president. The good thing I have constitutional giants for whom we shall continue having a dialogue on that, so that we see even how best, especially on issues of accountability. Because look, if the Auditor General reports to Parliament, and then you say resolutions of Parliament are advisory on accountability, and the Auditor General is an official of government, then what are you meaning? What do you mean by saying it is advisory? You know, that contradiction. This is that indeed, that's why I pushed that we do, I can go. I attend to that issue. You've done very groundbreaking, you know, research and recommendations on various aspects, especially on human rights. But this one is very, very critical, because issues of accountability are issues of human rights. If you steal money for medicine in hospitals, if you fail to do the work you're supposed to do, you're violating people's rights. We shall have victims. And these victims, in fact, sometimes you kill. You kill. I remember in my constituency, I got one person who came, the son had been arrested selling medicine. And he came that I go and help. I said, so where is he? He told me he was in Mitoma. I said, no, now I'm going to help by transferring him to Kampala. Because Mitoma, you might bribe, he gets out. And then he said, I won't give you a vote. I said, now, who am I trying to help? It's you. Because you're the one who is treated in the health center 3 of Vitereko, not me. But someone is saying, to protect my vote, I should bring out your son so that he can steal more medicine. So it's a contradiction whereby thieves are glorified, whereby people feel you steal as a clan, you steal as a tribe, you don't touch someone because this is our son. And even when you raise issues, sometimes Zahara, the research conducted by Huripek at the School of Roma Kerry reveals that there are a lot of funds that have been appropriated by Parliament of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, there are discrepancies between the sums claimed to have been appropriated. This shouldn't be happening, because you see, money appropriated by Parliament, we have a Hansard. We have a record of Parliament. It shouldn't be a question. Maybe that would cause that Makerere and normative action. So whereby the PSST has powers to suspend an accounting officer. But you have a dilemma. You suspend a permanent secretary as an accounting officer because he has not been able to account for funds. And then, okay, that undersecretary will be evaluated by the permanent secretary. That undersecretary will be reporting to the permanent secretary. That undersecretary will be sitting in top of management chaired by the permanent secretary, and will be getting directives from the permanent secretary, whom you have decided on that has not been able to account for public funds, and you have just suspended on this issue. if someone is suspended as an accounting officer, should they continue occupying the substantive position they were occupying? You know, but a permanent secretary, you should be a cow in the district. You should be the accounting officer. So if you don't qualify to be an accounting officer, if you can't be trusted to account for funds that are very critical for the development of the country, should you continue participations that determine where those funds go? No. So these are the reforms we need to look at as a country if we are to fight corruption seriously, so that people know it is very dangerous. We should make it extremely costly to misuse government resources. But now it's very, very easy. The other issue, of course, is to do with the questions that are coming out of the audits that we make. There are very, very grave allegations that the Auditor General's office is also involved in all this. So the credibility of the audit reports. And you see, sometimes you wonder, for example, when they did a forensic audit on Makerere, the other time we had strikes, and the Rendire committee, the Red Dr. Rendire, and you know, they brought a very interesting recommendation. Makerere University should account because, according to the money we found them having collected, it is lower than the students they are having. Therefore, explain to us why you're having more money, why you collected more money. Then I said, so how did you arrive at this? I said, we did a head count. So how did you do a head count? We called the students and said, each one of you should come for a head count. So any student who didn't come for a head count, we don't consider them students of Makerere. And I asked them, I said, so what punitive measure did you put in place to say if you don't come for a head count, lose your position as a student or not? They said none. Wrong information. And we've had incidences where you, even during the budgeting process, you remove very critical items, some of them which are even statutory, but because you are not given accurate information. So all that, all those are issues that need to be looked at deeply, and as a parliament we are going to be looking at them. So for us, we are ready to work with all accountability agencies and the civil society to ensure that indeed this is followed up. I'm happy to inform you that as Parliament, we ordered for a forensic audit of COVID funds. And the Auditor General has already given us the report. It's highly revealing. It's revealing. We shall be handling that report after the budgeting process. And I'm really glad this has also come before we could handle the report. So we are going to consider the report as HURIPEC to go much deeper, and it will aid our parliamentary committee. If possible, we shall also, when we are hearing that report, we shall also invite you to come and present before the committee, because this was specifically on utilization of COVID funds, so that you can share these findings and we incorporate them into our final recommendations. We have to go and ensure that the recommendations you make we pick out very, very clear recommendations among the ones you've made, and then we develop them into resolutions of Parliament that must be implemented. Now, the other issue of accountability is the limitation within the rules. Of course, we have a carrot and stick to approve someone. We can squeeze you so much during appropriation, but as Rule 225 of our Rules of Procedure provides for action taken reports on resolutions of Parliament. You know, I mean, the action might not be satisfactory, but it doesn't show. Now, the executive must play a critical role. The executive must come up and behind the resolutions of Parliament being advisory. It must come out and take up this resolution seriously, because we invest a lot in deeply, we give them a chance to come and respond, and comes to accountability issues, we don't even allow ministers in the meetings. We deal with accounting officers because ministers are not supposed to be handling money. Ministers are not supposed to be handling processes of procurement and all that. That's the role of the technical team. So the moment we continue doing that, I head with. Professor, you also talked about, of course, when we are in emergency mode, it usually turns out to be a bonanza. You know, when you press a panic button, someone immediately now clears their ground. You know, Uganda is very interesting. You see, when you're building a big house, there is always a smaller house also coming up near you, and you move at the same pace. When you run out of cement and you stop a little, the other house also stops. When you go, you borrow a house also, they resume. So it's very, very interesting. So for every crisis you see, someone calculates how many buildings will I get out of this, how many, and they do it through abuse of processes. So I think it's high time as a country that, and as a parliament, that we looked at implementing Article 26 of the Constitution, which provides for a contingency fund. Which contingency fund now you would plan for better, because it is supposed to be 0.5% of the national budget. But now finance never brings it out as this is the money we have in the contingency fund. What happens? They say, whenever you have an emergency, inform us, and then we provide money. And then you find you come, they say, we don't have money, we don't have what. But if we have that fund well prepared, then that fund would also be, would be having systems that would ensure that an emergency is abused to enrich some people, but processes are clearly followed. Also, we have to now go for value for money audits. These normal audits, forensic audit, what, they don't help. Because this is all about processes of how money was utilized. But did you get value? Did you get value? Someone can as well say competitively, I pushed out tenders, and the one who qualified, the lowest bidder, was selling a bed at 1 million. I've seen it the other day I was in my constituency during Easter, under UA, where we gave people goats, people in communities near the national park. But someone stood up and said, but Yamu, same goat you're saying you 320,000, you sold me a better one at 160. You, the supplier. And the man was forced to say, but you know how much mine is. And you don't ask me about the balance. But mine was this much. So communities know. So, but value for money audits are very, very critical in such circumstances, so that we know we don't only follow processes, but we also get the right value. Finally, my senior, Dr. Kabumba, touched on issues of human rights, on which I just want to make a comment or two, especially where we are going into recession in the human rights, where human rights are being delegitimized. Yes, there is a very huge concern, very, very huge concern, especially on cases that are very blunt. And sometimes I ask myself, who are these people working for? Some of them I ask, are you working for the regime? Really, what would just holding of a Women's Day celebration, what would it do to the regime? Or you're after, or you're even a saboteur, or you're sabotaging your own regime. Coming in of social media, you do anything, well, now it's more visible. You know, citizen journalism, anyone, anywhere. I think these things must have been going on in society, but there were no platforms to share them. Now they are more visible. There is more platform. They can easily be shared, but that we shouldn't give them the seriousness they deserve. We should question ourselves as a country.